My name's Jess and I'm from the Chrysalis Centre, and today I'm here with Sam. Sam, would you like to explain to us what your connection is to the Chrysalis Centre?
Hi Jess, thanks for having me. My name's Sam. I suppose I'm in some ways I'm quite close to the Chrysalis Centre. My mum was worked there for a few years, and I suppose she herself was a victim of domestic abuse years ago. So I experienced that alongside her in a way. And also I've done some money raising for the centre. I did an ultra marathon last year. I raised quite a bit of money for that. It was great, and we may do more again in the future.
Yeah, that's great. So I've got a few questions for you today about different things to do with masculinity, the way men are represented in the media, or just in general, really, and how it can affect you. My question was, has the concept of masculinity changed throughout your lifetime?
It's an interesting question. I'd say it has, and obviously there's downsides to it, but in my experience, it's been in a good way. Um, I suppose I remember a time where I suppose when I was in school, wasn't that long ago, really, what, 12, 13 years ago, I left school. Um, Things like, I suppose a broad subject, really. Things like jobs, things like sexuality, that kind of thing. There's a lot more stigma around what's the right thing and what's the wrong thing, really. I suppose in terms of jobs, I experience this in that, I work in digital. I design for a living. And I do remember the idea of going into it and that being considered less because it didn't have that manual labor, the old-fashioned manual labor element to it. And what's interesting is in my line of work as a designer, I'd say it's 50-50, men and women. I work on a team of 4 designers, 2 men, 2 women. And I think that's a really good, powerful thing in terms of things like sexuality. I remember just the awful things where there was some gay people in my school, and they were skittered, and
Yeah.
I suppose now it's really moved on. These things are much more accepted, and same with jobs. Digital jobs are much more accepted now as well. And I suppose that's where all the jobs are going. Manual labour jobs, they're becoming less required in a way, and
Definitely.
it's all going digital.
Yeah. So do you, how do you feel the kind of idea of masculinity has affected you throughout your life? Do you think it's put pressure on you growing up? Do you think it's it's been realistic or true to who you are as a man? Or do you think it's different? You're not the idea of like typical masculinity or what everyone used to think it was.
Um, I suppose a lot of my experiences that were shaped by the male role models in my life. And there's an awful. I'm not sure how much this relates to your question, but I'll answer it. There's this awful idea that, and it does happen. Men walk out on the children. It's pretty common. I've seen it quite a lot in my life. And with my own kids as well, I've got a stepson. That's happened with him. He's like my son,
Yeah.
and having similar things happen to me. And I've had good male role models in my life, and some bad male role models. But my experience of both of those is I think is shaped me for the better. And I know that with some people, it could shape them for the worse. They've had bad experiences, being influenced by bad male role models, or the dad's walking out on them, and that you can continue that cycle where you're not there for your kids, you walk out on your kids, you're not there for your partner, and it's somehow acceptable. And it still does happen. It's wrong. It is somehow acceptable that men out just take a lesser role, a backseat role, when it comes to the spouse and the kids.
Yeah.
Like I said, it shaped me for the better, and that I think is really legacy is really important. I think being in the here and now, for my partner, for my kids, is just so important, and I love it. I love being a dad, and yeah, I think I can say that the bad experiences that have happened in my life when it comes to those things, I've shaped me in a good way. I appreciate my kids. I appreciate my wife,
Yeah.
in a way that I suppose in a way that's deeper than what I might have, because I've experienced that. I've experienced kind of that little bit of abandonment. But yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, thank you. Speaking of role models, do you think there are enough positive male role models in media or in general society for younger boys growing up?
Uh, I don't think so personally. But then again, I've got quite a limited scope of who young people look at. I've got a 9-year-old son, and
Mhm.
he's not on social media yet, but he is on very much like YouTube. Like he's constantly changing what he wants to be when he's old. But one of the main things that's not really changed is I want to be a YouTuber. And you
Yeah,
watch some of these videos, and they're really, I mean, they're really uh, not to define what a good male role model and a bad one is, but they don't seem to me like very good male role models. It's
yeah,
so I was really pushing the idea of materialism, the more stuff the better. Really selling these kids the stuff into really kind of really silly thing.
yeah,
Um, as far as in adults, um, I'm to go on a bit of a tangent, but I have more get me words. I have role models that I follow on things like Facebook, Instagram, and
yeah.
the kind of the older I'm getting, the more I appreciate some of the ideas that they push out aren't very good,
Yeah.
and it is actually quite hard to find people who you not only relate to but actually push out really good messaging. I suppose because a lot of these influencers, these people, celebrities, whoever they are, you know,
Mhm.
a lot of their agenda is kind of making money, being famous, pushing that out. Um, and it isn't necessarily in the best interest of the people who follow and look up to them, really.
Yeah, definitely. Um, how do you feel that social media, like things like Facebook, Instagram, or where these influencers are showing these like ideals of being materialistic, good looking, um, ripped, and all that, what effect do you feel that that has on young boys today?
Well, it's interesting. So to give you a bit of my background, I'm really into my fitness, really into my running. I certainly don't look like that ripped or anything like that. And I know that to get to that that perfect male physique that's kind of been pushed out for years, it's pushed out even more. You're constantly bombarded with it.
Yeah,
I understand that it's not real to get to look like that. It's not healthy at all. To
yeah,
something like 7-8% body fat, but to
mm,
get there, it's these people paid to do it. They're paid by the companies to do it. They're paid by the film studios. They're constantly in there with the personal trainers, and there's drugs involved. It's totally, completely unrealistic for both men and women.
yeah,
And I see it a lot myself. It's it's quite damaging, and I suppose that's where things like body dysmorphia and really negative views of what you look like come into it. And being healthy and fit is just so it looks completely different to what you think it does. I mean,
mhm,
I do crazy runs
yeah,
all the time, and the healthiest and fittest people around the 50s and 60s. You wouldn't think it, but they're incredibly fit. So I mean, me personally, those are the types of people I like to follow, who I've got a few years under the belt, the and it's on a much deeper level. It's not about how you look; it's about living life to its fullest.
yeah. So they're basically pushing out the stuff that's really unrealistic and
Oh,
unachievable.
yeah, I see it all the time. It's awful.
Yeah. Um, the typical male stereotype is the male provider, like strong, reliable, more often than not, kind of like non-emotional. To what extent do you feel this still is present in today's society?
I think it's still very present, but it's definitely getting better. Um,
Mm,
so I I've been guilty of that myself. I mean, it's quite important to me to provide for my family. I went through an experience where I lost my job, and it was I think it was the hardest time of my life. And it was, and I found something quite quick, and I knew I'd find something. It wouldn't be much of an issue, but that idea of not being able to provide for my family, not just because of the safety nets, to pay for my mortgage and everything. There was very much I think I felt like less of a man. And I remember talking to my wife about this, and she said how toxic and silly that was, and the idea of it being a provider is nothing to do about how much of a man or not you are. And as far as kind of the messaging out there, like I said, I think it's still very much a thing where stay strong and silent and being stoic. And I think there is a time to be a stoic. I think there's a lot of strength in being stoic. But there's being a stoic, and then there's being an island kind of thing. Some people follow like military influences. That's the kind of thing I like. And a lot of these people are actually pushing out the messaging of talk. These people who've had the worst kind of PTSD. And I think it's a really, really positive, really good thing that it's been pushed out lately. And it is really starting to spread. So that, people who it would be considered the, height of masculinity, they've fought in wars, they've fought in Iraq, they've got, they've had these hard experiences that they've got through, they've released these books, they've done these amazing things, climbing Everest and everything, and these are the people who will start to say, listen, don't be an island, talk to people. You've got these issues. It doesn't make you any less of a man. And in fact, I know because I've experienced it myself. Now I think everyone's influenced it. I think everyone's experienced it to an extent. Actually talking to people about those issues, about whatever trauma you have, or just general day-to-day anxieties, it's actually harder to open up than it is to be closed off. And this is where the idea of being strong and silent kind of falls on its knees. It takes more strength, in my experience. It takes more strength to voice, voice the issues that you have.
Definitely. Do you think anything needs to change to help these younger generations growing up, like with the mental health or the learning of relationships, to make them more aware of what could go wrong and what behaviours they can do to try and prohibit it from happening in their life?
So I'll answer that in two ways. One is, experience from me. I experienced this with my own children. So one, I've got a 9-year-old son. I've got a 5-year-old daughter, a 4-year-old daughter. And my son, he's had his issues. He's ADHD. He's autistic. And him. It's been a big curve for the school to obviously understand his symptoms and everything, but also understand him emotionally and him to understand himself emotionally. It's been a big journey for him, and I think it's been a really good thing for his school.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of outside of things like autism, ADHD, young people who neurotypical.
Yeah.
Being able to approach mental health nurses in the school and to have those support. I think it does happen. I'm not sure how good it is in most schools, but I think it's really critical. But also in regards to social media, I suppose you could talk about this in every question, because it dominates so much of our culture, our life. Is I'm a believer in a little bit more regulation around social media. I experience a little bit in my work. So we deal with in my work, we deal with kind of brands, we deal with companies who put out a lot of messaging. Not all that messaging is ethical. Not all of it is useful for the customer, for the for people who are consuming the goods. So I think there should be more regulation around what the messaging is.
Yeah.
Which is hard to do because it's not governed by any country. It's it's international, but
it's difficult because they kind of want to make more money, and it doesn't matter how sometimes. But as these questions are to do with the 16 days to eliminate violence against women and girls, I have one last question for you, which is, what education do you feel needs to be put in place to stop male violence against women and girls?
I suppose it's just kind of, yes, education, education around the inherent size, strength, and presence you have over other people, especially when it comes to women and children. We inherently have a responsibility to keep ourselves in check, I suppose. Yeah.
Do you think like it would be helpful to talk about it in schools to kids, to like teach them about healthy relationships and things like that?
I think so. See, this is one of those. I don't know how much this happens now. It certainly didn't happen when I was in school, and that wasn't really that long ago. That was 12, 13 years ago that I left school. But yeah, I mean, definitely, and it's also a responsibility for a parent. And I suppose this isn't just violence, bad language, abusive behaviours, good behaviours. But everything, just constantly keeping your kids in check, not in an overly strict way, but
Yeah.
We all make mistakes, and just teaching them the right way to do things, and the influence you have over other people, and that everything you do has a consequence, kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's all the questions I have for you today, Sam. Thank you so much for sitting with me and answering.
Yeah, great. Well, yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
No problem. So thank you very much. I'll
Well, thank you. All right. Have a good day.
You
See you
too.
later. All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye.